What's up guys, Lynrick here now, back with another edition of Lundrick's Fave 5. So obviously with the Evolution pay-per-view coming up this Sunday, which the build-up's been kind of shit, hasn't it? But anyway, I'm going to do a Fave 5 WWE women's matches, that's simple really. But first, I just want to take about 5 minutes or so, just to talk about the Roman Reigns situation. I mean, obviously, I think something that I needed to address, something I'm going to get asked about, so I'm just going to talk about it for the first 5 minutes or so. So obviously the humongous news coming out of Monday Night Raw this week is Roman Reigns comes out in the opening segment. He's street clothes and the Universal title. Then he talks about how he was going to be a fighting champion, all that, and that's all a lie. And then he drops a bombshell, and that's the best way to describe it, an absolute bombshell. Reveals that he's been battling with leukemia for 11 years. Said he was first diagnosed when he was 22, which I don't think that's ever came out before. I mean, he might have said it before in an interview, but I don't think he has. But then he quickly put it in remission. But unfortunately, and just tragically really, it's come back. So then he's going to have to vacate the Universal title and go off and get treatment and all that. And like, oh my god, really? Yeah, just absolute horrible situation. Wow, yeah, unexpected, tragic, horrible, and yeah, just one of those things where it just puts a lot in perspective, really, doesn't it? I mean, some of this, we argue about this make-believe world of wrestling, all that, and we can all say we've taken it too seriously sometimes. I mean, some of the petty arguments we might have had over wrestling, really, and then the guys in it are battling real issues like this. I mean, yeah, it just puts things in perspective, and obviously, really, really emotional promo. I've got to give it to the Providence crowd as well. They were awesome. They instantly showed Roman Reigns respect, cheered him and all that. Just wow. And yeah, it's pretty much turned the WWE upside down, really, hasn't it? And just a horrible, horrible situation. I mean, cancer's horrible, isn't it? I mean, so many people have had to deal with cancer, and unfortunately, it's taken Roman Reigns. And I just get better, Roman. Really, the message. I mean, we've all said a lot of shit about Roman Reigns, but it's really Roman Reigns, a wrestling character. This is a completely different situation. This is Joe Hawaii, and he's dealing with a terrible illness. I mean, he's got a wife, he's got kids, he's got them to think about. So obviously Reigns has to leave now, and obviously his future's going to be up in the air. Who knows how long it's going to take? Could be a few months, it could be a year, could be 2 years, but who knows? But that's going to be his main priority. Get the treatment, hopefully get better, and once he puts it back into remission, obviously then you work your way back up to fitness and come back to the WWE. But first priority is getting this cancer leukemia nipped in the bud, hopefully. And I've got to say, for the most part, I'm really glad the wrestling fans, the majority, have been respectful about this. I mean, you've seen a lot of nice messages to Roman and all that, hoping he'll get better soon. I mean, you get the odd knobhead, I mean, but for like 95% of the people have been very respectful about it. But like I say, you have the odd knobhead who's like, because I've actually seen a couple of claims like this. This is all a work to get Roman Reigns cheated by the fans. First off, if you have that opinion, fuck you. And number two, I'm not even going to dignify that by getting mad and having a rant at you, to be honest. And obviously, when he walked up the ramp, the Shield buddies did the Shield fist. You could see Seth Rollins in absolute tears, and then Dean Ambrose looking sad, but my God, would that change later on the night. And then later on the night, you had Dean Ambrose turn heel on Seth Rollins, which at first kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. I just thought, on a night like this, you really need to send the fans home happy, but then you think about it and you're like, holy cow, Dean Ambrose going to have amazing heat now. I mean, Ambrose is going to be so hated as a heel now, and him and Rollins could do big business together as a babyface and a heel. But yeah, just my main message is really to Roman Reigns is get well, Roman. I mean, obviously I've given you some flack for your character and all that, but I respect you as the man Joe Hawaii. And to be fair, I've always respected him as a talent because I've always thought he was a talented guy. Just obviously the bookings was the big problem and all that, but obviously who gives a shit about that right now? I mean, this is a real life situation. Yeah, just do your best. Obviously, I know you're gonna fight this, Roman. You will fight this, and I hope you do get better. And hopefully, it's not the end of your career. Yeah, that's about it. Really, I just wanted to address it. I mean, really down about this. But so now we've got out of the way, I suppose. Let's get into why most people are here to watch the Lundrick's Fave Fives. Coming in at number 5, we're going back to 2016. And the weird thing about all these are going to be from the last 4 years, because let's be honest, I mean, for the most part, there wasn't that many great women's matches in the Divas era, the Attitude Ruthless Aggression era. I mean, you had some good ones, like Trish Stratus and Lita, Trish Stratus and Victoria and Mickie James and stuff like that. But for the most part, the girls were getting like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. It wasn't really until the NXT girls started getting over in NXT, and then that carried on to the main roster in 2015, that the women were having longer, more respected matches. The one I've gone with, this was more of a fun match, because there was a choice of 2 for the number 5 spot, because I had me 4, then I was going to either go Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch from TakeOver Unstoppable, or this one match right here from the July 25th, 2016 edition of Raw, Charlotte versus Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's Championship. I went for this one because of the entertainment factor and the big win and all that. So obviously that Raw, July 25, 2016, was the very first Raw of the brand new brand split. I mean, obviously the original brand split back in 2002. Then they revived the brand split in 2016, did the draft, and then they had Battleground to get through, and then right after Battleground was the start of the new era of Raw. So obviously then one of the main things for Raw got most of the women, and obviously SmackDown had to build their women's division from the ground up, and because they already had the WWE Women's Champion Charlotte Flair, and obviously her biggest rival at the time, Sasha Banks. So a lot of history between these two. I mean, this goes way back into like 2014, maybe even 2013, I'm not sure. So Sasha and Charlotte were young girls coming through on NXT. Obviously both had been signed. I think both got signed in about 2012. Then they formed a faction called the BFFs, which I believe some of Rhea's in there. Then obviously they split up in late 2014. Had a big match at TakeOver Our Revolution, and then Sasha ended up becoming the NXT Women's Champion, and then they both moved on to the main roster in, I think it must have been July or maybe even June of 2015, can't remember right now. And then they were in opposite factions, Paige, Charlotte and Becky, and Sasha was in the not BFFs, what were they called? Because it was her, Naomi and Tamina, but bollocks. Completely forgot the name now. Shit. That's awkward, isn't it? When I do a video and I can't remember stuff. But that's who the faction was, Sasha, Naomi and Tamina. Then obviously, I believe, then later on Charlotte broke out, became the Divas Champion. Then Sasha Banks, she was gone for a little bit, and then she came back at Royal Rumble to kick off the feud. But obviously we'll not talk about WrestleMania 32 because we'll talk about that later on. Then in the summer of 2016, Charlotte and Sasha started a feud. I mean, obviously, this is a renewal of the rivalry in NXT. Now they're just doing it on the main roster. And it's one of those rivalries, really, Sasha Banks versus Charlotte, where started off awesome, but by the end it was like, oh, these two again. I mean, I think, yeah, but anyway, we'll get to this match. So, also, on that Raw, really, they loaded up that show to have a fantastic show, and in a way that's watching that Raw is so frustrating. Awesome and frustrating. Awesome because it was a great show, and frustrating because you watch that and you know WWE has the ability to have awesome shows more often, but they don't. But also on this Raw you had the start of the tournament for the Universal title with 2 big fatal 4-ways, and then Finn Balor versus Roman Reigns in the main event. But for me, this is probably my favourite match in this show. It was Charlotte versus Sasha Banks for the Women's Championship. And yeah, just a fantastic match. Really, really hot crowd. Great stuff. They even did a whole finish where Sasha Banks pretended Dana Brooke had laid her out, and then Dana Brooke got ejected, so it was then just Charlotte and Sasha. And then a big moment with Sasha Banks winning her first Raw Women's Championship over Charlotte. Great match and a great moment. Now, of course, it got a bit silly later on when Sasha would win the title and drop it back to Charlotte, win the title, drop it back to Charlotte, and that happened like 3 times. But obviously, I'd probably say the best match they had with each other, it was either this one or maybe the one on July 15 NXT. Because like I said before, when I do actual list, that's an objective list. This is a subjective list, so when I did the list a few weeks ago, this will be probably some slight variations in that. But I'm really going to go with this match, number 5, because I just love the entertainment factor. And I always like matches when a babyface champion goes over. That I always really like that. So Charlotte versus Sasha, number 5. Coming in number 4, we're going to go to the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania 32. Charlotte versus Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch for the brand new and revived WWE Women's Championship. So after this, the next 3 matches are NXT ones. But for me, obviously, this is probably the most high profile match on the list because it took place at WrestleMania. So really, I love this match. I mean, because I was following these women since like 2014 when the whole thing started. I mean, I must admit I did slightly miss out on the Paige and Emma feud, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. But then obviously once Paige went to Raw, these girls along with Becky Lynch and Bayley really started the whole women's revolution thing that's been going on. So obviously they got big chances in NXT, and these 3 women were 3 of the 4 horsewomen, Bayley being the other one. Bayley stopped on NXT, all these women came through the main roster, and it took a while to really click, I think. I mean, they kind of pushed this women's revolution, but it wasn't really that great at first. I mean, obviously you had the Charlotte-Nikki Bella feud, which was pretty decent. Then the Charlotte-Paige feud, which was alright, but the matches weren't that great. But for me, the ball didn't really start get rolling until Becky Lynch and Charlotte started feuding early 2016. Because first off, you started off with Charlotte as a babyface, which then and now I don't really see Charlotte as a babyface, to be honest with you. I know WWE does, and that's what they want to do, and obviously they're trying to do that now. But it's just not really, doesn't really work in my opinion. I don't think she's a terrible babyface, but I think it's obvious she's far better as a heel. So obviously her and Becky were in the Paige Charlotte Becky group. That obviously dissolved when Paige turned on Charlotte, and then eventually Charlotte turned on Becky Lynch, and then obviously had Ric Flair as the manager, so Charlotte started turning a really good heel now. Obviously Charlotte and Becky had a few good matches. They had a good match at Royal Rumble 2016, and that brought the reach, because Sasha Banks has been on the injured for about a month, so Sasha Banks came back to a great pop. Now she had seemingly turned babyface, and now we had a 3-way rivalry with these 3 women. And obviously this culminated in a big time match at WrestleMania 32. So it was going to be a 3-way, Charlotte versus Sasha versus Becky Lynch. Obviously in the build up it looked like it was going to be for the Divas Championship, because that was the title that they had first. But obviously this was a time that they finally rebranded the women's division. They were no longer the WWE Divas. They were now WWE Women's Wrestlers. So the old Butterfly Divas titles retired, hopefully for good. I mean, I don't think anyone really wants to see that title brought back. And then the new WWE Women's Championship. Obviously, we hadn't had a WWE Women's Championship for a few years, because that got unified with the Divas title. Can't remember what year it was. Maybe 2010, maybe 2011, along that time period anyway. Yeah, and obviously now here they are on the grand stage of WrestleMania, mean, they had their opportunities on NXT and things like that, but let's be honest, WrestleMania is a completely different animal, isn't it, to be honest? I mean, WrestleMania is WrestleMania, it's always going to be that way. Obviously, WrestleMania is where memories are made and all that sort of cliche shit. But yeah, so this is a big one now, because obviously the main roster hadn't really given them a big chance up until this point. And this was by far the biggest chance he'd ever had, really. Now, could they deliver on the grand stage of WrestleMania? I mean, you look at the WrestleMania, the poster that was outside the stadium. I mean, on one side I had Roman Reigns and Triple H, on the other side Shane McMahon versus The Undertaker, and then slap dab in the middle, these three women. So this was cool. So then obviously, yeah, awesome match here. I love this match. I think it's absolutely fantastic. First off, I love Sasha Banks' entrance in the Eddie Guerrero inspired gear. Charlotte looked great, Becky looked great, and they got quite a lot of time as well. I think they got like about 17 minutes or something like that, which is cool, because that was probably one of the main fears I had going in. Obviously, WrestleMania, a lot of matches to get through on the card. Sometimes things get dicked for time, and obviously traditionally the women always seem to get dicked for time, really. So, but they never. They got enough time and they made the most of it. I mean, they had some exciting spots, some great near falls. I think the one I would say I definitely agree that Sasha Banks should have gone over. I think that was a criticism at the time, and I think it's definitely valid now. Because let's face it, it was cool when Sasha won the title on Raw that time, when he won the first title, but winning at WrestleMania is always going to be bigger and it's always going to be better, isn't it, really? So yeah, I must admit I really enjoyed the hell out of this match. Thought it was great. Definitely the best main roster women's match ever, in my opinion. They've had a few close since then, like that Sasha Charlotte back match I mentioned. Probably Charlotte and Asuka from WrestleMania this year was really good. And who knows, maybe this Evolution pay-per-view we can get something that rivals it. Maybe the Charlotte and Becky Last Woman Standing match can be on that level, but let's see. But for now, this match is great, absolutely loved it. Got to be in the top 5. Now we're at the top 3, and from here on out they're all going to be NXT matches, because that's really where this whole women's movement really started, with Triple H on NXT. And for me, number 3, I mean, this is one of the most important matches in the history of the women's division. I mean, if this match hadn't happened, it wouldn't have opened so many eyes and wouldn't have created so many opportunities. And that's from the original takeover, NXT TakeOver 1, I think it was May 2014, for the vacant NXT Women's Championship. Charlotte versus Natalya. Charlotte had Ric Flair in her corner, and Natalya had her uncle Bret the Hitman Hart in her corner. So, like I alluded to earlier, I mean, the whole movement really started with Paige and Emma in 2013. I mean, they were having some really seriously good matches, and it was like, this is pretty good. And then obviously TakeOver Arrival happened. Paige and Emma had a really good match in there. And I think that planted some seeds of what these women could do, because I think the women, they were signed, they were in the Performance Centre, they were actively trying to get away from the Divas thing, and they just wanted to wrestle. Because for a long time it was like, yeah, the women can't wrestle, let's not bother with that. Obviously, but I think they had a good era in like 2003, 2004, with like the Trish, Lita, Mickie James, Victoria, people like that, but still, they were treated as mid-card acts on Raw and SmackDown, and were only really given 5, 6, 7 minutes on pay-per-view. I mean, I think maybe Trish and Lita Unforgiven got a little bit longer than that, but yeah, for the most part, they were just really in short matches. So obviously, night after WrestleMania 30, Paige has moved up to the main roster, memorably beating AJ Lee to become the Divas Championship. That meant she vacated the NXT Women's Championship, which created an opportunity. And there was a tournament, and the final came down to these two women. So obviously, Natalya had been on the main roster for a while, and then would drop down to NXT from time to time to help them out. And that's kind of a weird thing I was thinking about, because watching the early NXT, so obviously one of the things people talk about NXT now is the NXT just loads them with indie veterans, and the young guys don't really get a chance. But if you watch the early editions of NXT, what they did, they would bring in underutilized main roster guys and then give them meaningful spots. So if you watch those NXTs, you see quite a bit of people like Michael McGillicuddy, Justin Gabriel, people like that. Obviously, probably most notably Cesaro. Had a really good run when he threw down at NXT for a little while. Then the main ones in early 2014 were Tyson Kidd and Natalya. I mean, those were two of the main photos of this show. I mean, Tyson Kidd main evented this NXT takeover with Adrian Neville. So Natalya's the veteran, she gets the final. And then Charlotte gets to the final. So obviously, Charlotte had only really been wrestling for a couple of years at that point. She signed with the WWE in 2012, trained at Performance Center, debuting on NXT in 2013. And I think there was just something about her from the start. I mean, obviously she was a world-class athlete. I mean, that was never really a question. Obviously she had the family lineage, being Ric Flair's daughter and all that. But she just looked like a natural to me. But obviously she was still green and all that, and that's where Natalya came in. So we get this match, and I'm not going to lie, part of what I love this match is the fact that Bret Hart and Ric Flair are there. Obviously that's cool. Them guys being in the girls' corner just made this a better match, or a more an interesting match, put it that way. And then the match. So I remember watching this at the time live, expecting this. I was expecting this to be a good match, but I wasn't expecting to steal a show or anything like that. So I watch it, then you're watching the match and you're thinking, yeah, this is pretty good. Then, oh wow, this is really good. Then the more it's going on, you're like, oh my Christ, this is awesome. So yeah, they got like, I'm not sure how long they got, I can't remember, but it must have been about 17, 18 minutes, or I'll say 15 at least. I can't remember the exact time of the match, but they definitely got the time and they made the most of it. I mean, this is honestly just an awesome performance from both girls. I mean, I think it's one of those ones where you watch this match and it's like, oh, that's what the women are capable of when they get the chance. Awesome. So yeah, this is just a really good, technical, aggressive match between two good performers. Got to give a lot of credit to Natalya, because obviously she was clearly the leader in this match, and this is easily Natalya's best ever match ever. Even to this day, one of Charlotte's best matches. And a great moment with Natalya putting the younger Charlotte over clean as a whistle, and this was Charlotte's first NXT Women's title. So obviously, the first of many versions of a women's title that Charlotte's won over the last 4 years. And yeah, obviously this was a breakout match, and it was all systems go from Charlotte at that point. And then on the back of that, the women's division in NXT grew and grew and grew until obviously that transitioned over the main roster into where we are right now, having a all women's pay-per-view this Sunday. I mean, I honestly feel like without this match, that might not be possible, to be honest with you. So in that regard, because this is the one that started it all, this definitely deserves the number 3 spot on the list. Now we're down to the top 2, and we're sticking with NXT. Now coming at number 2 is going to be Sasha Banks versus Bayley, 30-minute Iron Man match for the NXT Women's title. Now right there, I'll probably give you a spoiler what's number 1's going to be. Now you know this is number 2, you probably know exactly what number 1's going to be. But obviously this is massively significant as well, because this was the first time a Divas or a women's match main evented where I suppose in this case the equivalent of a pay-per-view. I mean, obviously you had stuff like Trish and Lita main event in Raw back in 2014. I'm pretty sure the women had main event NXT television at least once. I believe Charlotte and Sasha in July 2015 did that. And it's probably happened other times as well, but I can't remember any of them off the top of my head right now. But this was obviously on NXT TakeOver is the NXT equivalent of a pay-per-view. And then in a 30-minute Iron Man match, or I like to call it an Iron Woman match, but WWE, which is a bit weird, WWE insisting on keep calling it an Iron Man match, but with women in it. But yet they call it Asuka Nikki Cross and the Charlotte Becky match coming up with last woman standard matches. Maybe I'm just a bit of a lunatic and take things like that way too seriously. But anyway, so obviously TakeOver Brooklyn happened. Sasha and Bayley had an absolute classic on that show. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we won't. So after that, obviously a massive buzz about this. I mean, we'd had great matches in the past before with women's, but I think that match took it into a whole nother level. It was like, holy crap, this is what the women can do. Women can have matches like this. I mean, that was as good as any men's match that year, to be honest. So obviously now, Bayley finally won the NXT Women's Championship. Sasha Banks had gone the main roster, but I suppose like a bit like Kevin Owens earlier in the year, she didn't immediately leave NXT. She stuck around for a little bit, and this is going to be a swan song on NXT. So obviously Sasha's a former champion. She gets a rematch with Bayley, but this time it's going to be 30 minutes Iron Woman match here. Yeah, I mean, obviously that announcement was like, holy crap, this is going to be awesome. So obviously the women had got time before, but now they were guaranteed 30 minutes on a takeover. In the main event spot as well, which is great. I mean, you gotta give credit for Triple H for having faith in these women. I mean, you see the women's documentaries and all that, and they always like to give Stephanie McMahon credit for really starting the women's revolution, but no. Let's just ignore that. Triple H is the one who gave them the chance on NXT to show what they could do. Then off the back of that, they became bigger and better. So, if anyone should get the credit for it, it's Triple H, really. But obviously, another build-up for this one, great. And the match was, could they deliver a big-time main event? This is on NXT TakeOver Respect. The same show we had the initial Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic with Samoa Joe and Finn Balor winning. And the answer for me was a resounding yes. I mean, they took this match and they made it awesome. I mean, some absolutely great stuff. And really watching this back, I mean, it's just sad to see what happened to Bayley and Sasha in the last couple of years. I mean, contrast this Bayley and Sasha feud to the, well, I don't know if I'm going to call it a feud that they had this year. So whatever the hell that storyline's been this year has been total wank. I mean, they built up too long, and they didn't pull a trigger, and now they're still friends, whatever. I mean, this is the best of Bayley and the best of Sasha Banks. I mean, obviously the boss character Sasha was in NXT. That is the best of Sasha Banks, and I really hope it's not too late for Sasha Banks to turn it around. I mean, I don't think by any means Sasha Banks a bad babyface at all, but I think she's definitely a much better heel. And obviously this was probably Bayley was probably peaking in popularity at this point. I mean, for me, she was probably as over as any of the guys in NXT. Maybe the most over person on NXT. And for me, probably the one they screwed up with the most on the main roster. I mean, she was a complete, pure babyface that WWE just ballsed up, didn't they, to be honest. But we're not going to get into a rant about that right now. Let's just talk about this match. So, great match, obviously. Girls cut a great pace, because obviously 30 minutes, you don't want to be gassed out after 15 minutes. So they kept it going. I mean, Sasha did some horrible stuff to Bayley. She really had the crowd hating it, and then Bayley, great fight back from Bayley, classic babyface stuff. Then of course, in the end, Bayley defeats Sasha Banks to retain the NXT Women's title. Yeah, obviously you haven't saw this match before, you definitely need to seek it out. Great stuff. And on that note, number one, of course, Sasha Banks versus Bayley for the NXT Women's Championship, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. To me, this is it for me right here. One of the best matches of the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. For me, the best women's match I've ever seen. I mean, there might have been some better matches and stuff like All Japan Women in the 1990s and things like that. But as far as mainstream wrestling, this has got to be the best women's match ever. Obviously, like I said, we had the 4 horsewomen, Charlotte, Bayley, Becky, Sasha. Obviously, 3 of the 4 horsewomen went to the main roster in the summer of 2015, which left Bayley on NXT by herself. I mean, obviously, Charlotte and Sasha were probably the top women in the one, and Bayley was always that underdog who kept getting close but kept failing every time. I mean, she had a few shots at the NXT Women's Championship, notably against Charlotte at Fatal 4-Way. Then, ironically enough, there was the Fatal 4-Way TakeOver Rival with all the 4 horsewomen, with Sasha Banks won. And it just seemed like, Bayley was that one who was never going to win the big one. Obviously, Sasha Banks after she won the NXT Championship, she just went from strength to strength for the character. I mean, the boss, what a bitch she was. She was an awesome character. I mean, and obviously just fantastic worker as well. I mean, you got to think Sasha probably one of the best NXT Women's Champions ever. I would say, definitely. I mean, she had a great run there, and then, but now she was going the main roster, and it was obviously those three women going. It was Bayley's time to carry the NXT Women's division. So build up for this was fantastic. I mean, there was nothing complicated. You had a great world class heel in Sasha Banks, a great babyface and Bayley, the people want to get behind. And then get this for the build up. Bayley won some wrestling matches. She beat Charlotte and she beat Becky Lynch. And then she was an unwanted contender. How simple is that? You build babyfaces up by having them win big matches. And then they get over. And then people want to see them win the title. So obviously NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, which I think I alluded to in the past video, at that time was this is one of the most important shows in NXT history, because for the first time NXT had went out of Full Sail for a takeover and went to a big arena like the Barclays Centre the night before SummerSlam 2015. I mean, obviously since then they do this all the time now, but back then it was like there was a big question: could this actually draw? Could they actually sell out the Barclays Centre, or at least not embarrass themselves? So obviously, if this show wasn't a success, obviously they probably wouldn't have done WrestleMania weekend in Dallas, and then they wouldn't have went back to Brooklyn in 2016. And obviously, every single Big Four now has a takeover the night before, and then they usually do one in Chicago as well. So you have 5 big takeovers a year. And this was the biggest. This is, of course, main evented by Kevin Owens versus Finn Balor ladder match. But when this NXT TakeOver was finished, this was the match we were talking about. Bayley versus Sasha Banks, the NXT Women's Championship. So obviously the hype package for this was awesome. Bayley's entrance, great, obviously with the polka dots Dusty Rhodes tribute thing. Sasha Banks, amazing entrance with them. Coming out with the big car and getting the bodyguards to get her to the ring and all, lifting her in the ring as well. What a bitch. What a bitch, getting guys to carry her into the ring, fuck off. But yeah, obviously a match, absolutely outstanding match. I mean, I guess the women were told to encourage us to go out and steal the show and show what they could do, and that's exactly what they did. I mean, they had a great thing revolving around in hand injury from Bayley. Sasha was beating on it and beating on it and beating on it. Bayley was selling her ass off, and fans were so behind Bayley in this match. I mean, that's what I really like to see, when you have a great babyface and a great heel, and the fans just want to see the babyface win the end. Some great near falls and all that. A particularly sick spot though. I mean, really disgusting spot of a reverse hurricanrana off the ropes. Holy crap, could that have gone so wrong? I mean, I actually personally hate the reverse hurricanrana. I think it's one of the worst moves in wrestling today. Really sick spot. Obviously, Sasha came close to winning. And then Bayley hit that match winning Bayley to belly. And 1, 2, 3. Bayley finally done it in a really, really emotional moment. I mean, so obviously, I'm assuming when they were having this match, they knew they were having something special. When I watched it, I knew I was watching something special. Then after the match, they kind of did a curtain call style thing with Charlotte and Becky coming out, and then Sasha Banks hugging Bayley, then the 4 horsewomen having a group hug, doing the 4 horsewomen sign, and it was a magical match. It really, really was. I mean, it's one of those matches. If you haven't seen this match, you've got to see it type thing. Absolutely. If you haven't seen this match, you absolutely have to seek this match out. It really is that good. And for me, the best women's match I have ever seen in my life. No doubt about it. So, that's another wrap, guys. So, next week, I'm going to start Survivor Series videos, because I just want to make sure I get them all in before Survivor Series. So, I'm doing at least 3 videos in a row. So, I think next week, it'll be other matches of Survivor Series. So, not elimination matches, and the following week will be elimination matches. And the week after that, we're going to have Survivor Series shows, and then, if I've got time, because I'm not sure if I've got time to do all this or not, if I have time to fit it in before TakeOver, I'll do a Fave 5 War Games match as well. So I've got the next month or so mapped out. So, thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, peace.